Shalom, shalom. Call halal Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Kakwadash. Double honors to the apostle and elder millstone who rule well. And salutations to the brother on the four corners of the earth, pushing word, truth, and sincerity. I was watching a show on Netflix a couple days ago, and they mentioned a type of jellyfish, which they call the immortal jellyfish. Now, I thought this thing was fake. I thought it was a farce until I looked it up and found out that this type of jellyfish is said to be practically immortal because what it does with its cells. What it does with its cells is it basically transforms old cells into new ones, and doing so lengthens its lifespan. Now, I looked it up for a quick second, and I kind of left it alone until yesterday morning. My son was watching a kid, one of those kiddie shows on PBS Kids, and they mentioned the jellyfish again, and it came up again, and I was like, man, you know what? That's really interesting. So I looked it up, and I noticed that it's a strange comparison to, how back in the ancient world, men used to live upwards to about 960 years old, which when you look at that in the scriptures, and when you look at things like that we talk about on highways and byways, like spiritual powers and the ability to live 1,000 years and things like that, people look at us like we have three heads, like it's impossible. But you have a jellyfish. Actually, you have two types of jellyfish that can essentially live for a long, considerable amount of time. Basically forever until they're eaten. And I just wanted to use an example of Methuselah, because Methuselah is the oldest recorded, living man on the ever existed. This is Genesis 5:25. It says that Methuselah lived 187 years and begat Lamech. And Methuselah lived after he begat Lamech 782 years and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Methuselah were 969 years, and he died. Now, when you think about that, a lot of people read that, and they say that's impossible because men right now can only live up to, about 100, 110, 120, if they have a really good life and no stress and, in the perfect conditions, like a Rothschild, for example. So, and you got, and regular men now are what, 80, 85, maybe 90, maybe 80 if they're lucky, really. And you look at that and they're like, well, that's impossible because we've been trying to elongate, the human species lifespan for years. But when you think about it, if you actually go back into the history, there's a reason why the lifespan is so short that it is now, But really, when you think of the Most High, do you really want to shorten the powers of the Most High? Do you really want to put him in such a box? This is Luke 18:27, and he said, "The things which are impossible with men, like lengthening our lifespan, are possible with the Most High." Because you have to remember, this is the Most High we're talking about. This is Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, the all-powerful, the all-knowing. So when we look at things like this jellyfish, the Lord has actually made this jellyfish essentially immortal. Now, if he can do this for a jellyfish, what do you think he can do for men? What do you think he's done for Methuselah, who lived 969 years, man? What do you think he's going to do for the men of the Lord that fulfill prophecy, and get to reign with Yahushua 1,000 years? How do you think that's going to happen? And this just opened my mind to that, of how that's actually possible, and how that the Lord could do it, Now, this is the immortal jellyfish. This is what it looks like over here on the right. The scientific name is the Torritopsis dohrnii. It says the immortal jellyfish is a species of small, biologically immortal jellyfish found in the Mediterranean Sea. It says, and in the waters of Japan. It is one of the few known cases of animals capable of reverting completely to a sexually immature, which is a child, colonial stage after having reached sexual maturity, which is an adult, as a solitary individual. Others include the jellyfish Laodicea, undulata, and Aurelia. Like most other hydrozoans, or jellyfish, the T. dohrnii begin their life as a tiny, free-swimming larvae known as planula. As a planula settles down, it gives rise to the colony of polyps that are attached to the sea floor. Now, a polyp is a baby jellyfish. All the polyps in jellyfish arise from a single planula are genetically identified clones. The polyps form into an extensively branched form, which is not commonly seen in most jellyfish. Jellyfish, also known as medusae. Jellyfish are also known as medusae. Then bud off these polyps and continue their life in a free-swimming form, eventually becoming sexually mature. So they become adults. When sexually mature, they have been known to prey on other jellyfish species at a rapid pace. So they eat other jellyfish. It says, if a T. dohrnii jellyfish is exposed to environmental stress or physical assault, or is sick or old, it can revert to the polyp stage. So it can revert back to a baby. Now it's like whoa, how is that possible? You know, this is where you find out how magnificent the works of Yahweh Shem Yahushai are. It says forming a new polyp colony. It does this through the cell development process of transdifferentiation. Now, transdifferentiation, also known as lineage reprogramming, is a process in which one mature somatic cell transfers into another mature somatic cell without undergoing an immediate pluripotent state or progenitor cell type. So basically what that means is that the cells, when they become shocked, which really what it is. When a jellyfish succumbs to stress, physical assault, gets sick or old, basically when it gets shocked, emotionally or physically, the cells undergo something called differentiation, which is basically the cells in its body transform themselves into entirely new cells. The cells don't split like mitosis, like viruses do. The cells continue. The cells essentially refresh themselves. You know, they don't stop themselves from breaking down or anything, but they refresh themselves and continue the lifespan all over again. Now that's something that the Lord does with jellyfish. How much more with men? Now with men, our cells might not transform into entirely new cells. Our cells just might not break down over time. But when you look at things like immortality and living 1,000 years and things like that, and people say it's impossible, well, wait a second. We have a living, breathing, plausible, studied example of the Lord elongating a lifespan of a creature, and it's totally within its means, man. Scientists are studying it right now to figure out how men can actually live forever. you know, that's only because the Lord made this happen. The Lord put forth this example so we can know that the things that He puts forth in the scriptures are real. It says which alters the differentiation state of the cells and transform them into new types of cells. It says theoretically the process can go on indefinitely. So the jellyfish can not only do this once or twice, they can keep doing this over and over and over again. So theoretically this process can go on indefinitely, effectively rendering the jellyfish biologically immortal. Whew! That's heavy, man. That is ridiculous. So these jellyfish can do this process over and over again and refresh their cells and become babies and grow up all over again at the click of a button. Although in practice individuals can still die, and in practice meaning that they can die by being eaten, they can die by hitting some type of reef floor while they're flying or anything like that, or shocking each other, or whatever it is. It says, although in practice individuals can still die, in nature most turritopsis are likely to succumb to predation or disease in the Medusa stage, without reverting to the polyp form. You know, so a lot of them succumb to disease before they reach adulthood. You know, but the thing about it is, they can die by being eaten or being physically assaulted or things like that. But as far as dying from old age, they will not. you know, you know how they say humans die from old age or die from natural causes. They will not. You know, they reach maturity, they can revert back to a polyp anytime they want. It says the capability of biological immortality. Second, the capability of biological immortality with no maximum lifespan makes T. dohrnii an important target of basic biological aging and pharmaceutical research. So they're trying to find the key to the fountain of life inside of this jellyfish, man. You know, but the reason being, the reason why we are only around 120 years, maybe if that lifespan, is because we sinned against the Lord, man. Back in Genesis, it's Romans 3:23. It says, "For all have sinned and come short of the glory of the Lord." And the glory of the Lord is 1,000 years. You know, so we've all sinned and we come short because of it. Our lifespans are shortened because we've sinned against the Lord. Going back to Genesis chapter 6. Now this is right before the Lord started putting things in play for the flood. It says, "And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years." Now this is after Genesis 5, where I showed you Methuselah, where he lived 969 years. So going into Genesis 6, the Lord had shortened the days, or shortened the lifespan of men to 120 years. Reason being is because men were wicked in those days. So the Lord said, you know what? I'm tired of all the crap. I'm going to shorten your lifespan so that way, it shortens the amount of sins you can accumulate. You know, so this is why men's days are shortened down to essentially 120 years, and I haven't seen anyone on this planet live past 120 years. You know, I haven't seen. I think the most I've ever seen someone live was like 100 like 60, 15, 16, I think, in my lifetime. And I'm pretty young, so I mean, older brother can probably attest to a little bit longer, but I can guarantee you, no one has seen anyone live past 120 years, man. This shows you that the scriptures are true, you know. But the reason this being is because we sin, man, you know, and it makes perfect sense. Because when you go into 2nd Ezra chapter 5, verse 54, it says, "Consider thou therefore also how that ye are less of stature than those that were before you." So, meaning that we're shorter, we're weaker, you know, we're not as smart, not as resourceful as the humans that came before us that were, in the ancient world, going back to Rome, going back to Babylon, going back to Assyria, going back to Egypt, um, going back to the time of Moses, going back to the time of Abraham, going back to this Genesis, the 5th chapter, in the 6th chapter, you know. So our lifespan is way shorter. Our resources, our brain capacity, our thoughts, our intellectuality is way smaller than our predecessors that came before us. It says, "And so are they that come after you, less than ye." So each generation, the lifespan gets shorter. Each generation, they get less intellectual, less intelligent. Each generation, they get weaker. You know, it says, "As the creatures which now begin to be old and have passed over the strength to youth." You know, So they begin to be old and they die and they pass over their strength to youth. That's something that the Toratops Dorna, or this immortal jellyfish, doesn't do. You know, this jellyfish gets old and reverts right back to a baby. You know, that's immortality. You know, using this certain method of transdifferentiation. You know, but like I said, what if the Lord, in this reign of 1,000 years, our cells just don't break down? You know, our cells are just constantly rejuvenated. It says, verse 56, Then said I, Lord, I beseech thee, I have found favor in thy sight, so thy servant by whom thou visitest thy creature. You know, so this is Ezra's asking the Lord to show him how he visits the creatures on earth. You know, but that was all I had for the lesson. I just wanted to introduce the Toratops dorni, or the immortal jellyfish, just to show what I've seen. What I just learned is that immortality is possible, and we see it every day in the earth. You know, we see it every day in the earth. Most of the examples in the scriptures that people can't believe are shown in the animal kingdom. You know, such as true order and things like that. But I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who well, and salutations to the brethren on the four corners of the earth, pushing word and truth and sincerity. Shalom.